Primero llegaron y dijeron que todos salieran a la calle.
First, they forced everyone out of their houses and made us all lie face down in the street, both men and women.
Hombres y mujeres, boca abajo. Y los niños llorando. Los soldados estaban así.
There were soldiers on both sides. Then they moved away to see the women kneeling down on the ground to pray. They killed all of them. Not a single one of them survived. Just me by the grace of God. I hid under a tree. When I heard the screams of the children, and I knew which ones were mine, they were crying, "Mommy, they're killing us."
Over 900 men, women, and children were massacred. Virtually the entire population of the village and the area surrounding El Mozote. Out of 143 bodies identified in the laboratory, 131 were of children under the age of 12, including 3 infants under the age of 3 months. 10 of the 12 officers cited as responsible for the El Mozote massacre were graduates of the School of the Americas. They were members of the Atlacatl Battalion, a part of the El Salvador Army. November 16, 1989, San Salvador. 6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper, and her 15-year-old daughter were slaughtered. To get the facts about this incident, a U.S. congressional investigation began, led by Representative Joseph Moakley.
I went down, talked with the embassy, talked with the military, talked with the Unionists. The killing was done by the Atlacatl Battalion, which is the crack battalion in that country. And these are the people, some of them had just returned from the United States, where they were taught a course on human rights, amongst other things.
19 of the 26 officers implicated in the Jesuit murders were graduates of the school. The United Nations Truth Commission report, released on March 15, 1993, cited specific officers for committing atrocities during the El Salvador Civil War. At School of the Americas Watch, just outside Fort Benning, Georgia, Vicki Immerman matched the names cited in the UN report with names in a United States government document.
What I did was I took these officers, all the officers listed in the report, and I took their names and looked them up in this list of graduates of the School of the Americas, which we received through the Freedom of Information Act. What I found were 49 of the 60-some officers listed were graduates of the School of the Americas.
El Salvador is only part of the school's story. In the entry area of one of its main buildings are photographs of those the school honors, its so-called Hall of Fame. At the top of the list, Hugo Banzer, former dictator of Bolivia, a graduate of the school. Some of the others similarly honored are the former dictators of Honduras, Ecuador, and Argentina, and generals from 8 other Latin and Caribbean nations, many cited by human rights groups for involvement in human rights abuses in their own countries. Among other graduates, Manuel Noriega, former president of Panama, currently in prison in the United States. 4 of the 5 ranking Honduran officers who organized death squads in the 1980s as part of Battalion 316 are graduates. Half of the 250 Colombian officers cited for human rights abuses attended the school. The 3 highest-ranking Peruvian officers convicted in February 1994 of murdering 9 university students and a professor were all graduates. During the dictatorship of the Somoza family, over 4,000 National Guard troops graduated from the school. Many of them later became known as the Contras, responsible for the deaths of thousands of Nicaraguan peasants in the 1980s. The general in charge of Argentina's so-called dirty war was a school graduate. During that internal conflict in the late 1970s and early 1980s, an estimated 30,000 people were tortured, disappeared, and murdered. General Hector Gramajo of Guatemala was the featured speaker at the school's graduation ceremonies in 1991. Human rights groups claim he is the architect of strategies that legalized military atrocities in Guatemala, resulting in the death of over 200,000 men, women, and children.
As a Catholic priest, as a U.S. citizen, I really feel a responsibility to speak out against that because of this. This does not lead to healing. It leads to death and suffering. In a way, this is a death machine. And this, I want to say, is very close to home because it's in our backyard. It's not out there in El Salvador. This is not in South Africa. We're talking about a school of assassins right here in our backyard, being supported and financed through our tax money. It's being done in our name.
An amendment offered
On September 30th, 1993, the School of the Americas was debated by Congress for the first time in its history. It happened when an amendment to the Defense Department budget was introduced by Congressman Joseph Kennedy.
Mr. Speaker, my amendment would reduce the Army Operation and Maintenance account by $2.9 million, the amount dedicated to running the Army School of the Americas at Fort Benning, Georgia. The intent of this amendment is to close the school.
We're only 30 or 40 votes short of winning. That means that if people around the country hear about this and write their congressman, we can win. This is an issue that we can win on.
And what's very important right now, I feel, is to let our voices be heard. Bishop Romero said it best. Before he was killed, before he was assassinated by someone who trained at the School of the Americas, he said, we who have a voice, we have to speak for the voiceless. And I realize that we here in this country, we have a voice. We can speak without having to worry about being disappeared or tortured or being picked up. We can speak, and I just hope that we can speak clearly and boldly on this issue.
I'm not very educated, but in my simple words, I think that the only thing the School of the Americas has accomplished is the destruction of our countries in Latin America. Don't give us any more of that military aid. It would be better to help the poor who are in need.
We need the voices of others, and we also need those letters to congressional leaders to let them know that we will not allow them to use our money to run a school of assassins.